Okay, so before we get into just a load of different topics regarding young females and females in general, you'd like to tell us a bit about your organization and kind of what you're
Um,
doing?
yeah, I founded Daddyless Daughters in 2017. We kind of, the vision for the organization has grown like over time. Um, we are focused on, we're like a community based company that focuses on creative expression. We've seen a niche with girls that grow up fatherless that are not really taught emotional development. Therefore, they're not really taught healthy ways to express themselves and healthy ways to sustain healthy relationships with men. And also we come from like real broken families, so the rooted issues that are underneath that, we kind of use art as a way, and different forms of arts, to kind of dig that out of them. Then we
Okay.
take them down a route depending on what their needs are. We either plug them into therapy, life coaching, we take them on ourselves and do mentoring with them. And we just really just encourage them to find their voice and own their stories.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot. I think we've been following it for how long we've been following it now since the Resource Project. I got introduced to the organization a while back, and I think it's important, especially working with I work with a brother called Raymond Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
He deals with a lot. He works in lots of prisons, like male and female, and dealing with young people, and he's always bringing up, the issue of young girls, in terms of gangs and stuff like that, and the things that they go through, and also how early they experience trauma, and then
Mm.
how, and then just understanding trauma, and that everyone's trauma is quite different, and kind, like, trauma can set off at any time. Example, someone can be in a car accident, they're all good for the next 4 or 5 years, and something happens in their life, and then bang, it just
They're
brings back,
triggered
yeah, it
again, yeah.
triggers that, and then everything comes running back. So just understanding how early and traumas can set in for young people, especially girls. We started to look at things like groping, like that's been in the news recently a lot, in terms of, women getting unwanted attention, and what's the line, what does that mean, how does that look like. And then we started having conversations about, like, when we was in school, certain things seem normal that really ain't
I'm not
normal,
normal,
you know what
yeah.
I'm saying. And so for us, it's like, what's your experience with that, in terms of how early certain traumas.
Well, I think that, well, what you said about the girls like going out and seeking attention, like, it's not, they're aware, they know what they're doing,
Mm.
but it's just about those voids that they're trying to fill, and the different ways they try to fill those voids. In my own personal experience, I have tried multiple ways to fill the void of like my daddyless wound,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And because I've worked with young people for about 6 7 years now, I saw that like everybody had a systematic approach to trauma, when, like what you're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
their experiences are very person centered. So we can't like come at a situation. So say for example, girls that are groomed specifically by gang members, we can't look at them and say, oh, okay, this must be the solution, this must be the void they're trying to fill. And it's very person
Yeah,
centered.
of course.
We don't know what their experiences were in the home before they came out into the street, what even put them out in the street in the first place, and then how they started to form these relationships.
Cool.
So we just come to the solution that like it's the relationship that we need to focus on. Because again, from my personal experience, when I started getting involved in road stuff and that, it was because I lacked discernment. I lacked being able to know who was really for me, who could really lead
Okay,
me,
I'm with
guide
you.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was trying to fill those voids because I didn't have a parental structure. I was out here from a very young age, and I was in care. So I then like had this state of mind where I didn't want to go home at night now. So then I would expose myself to what happens at night on the street, and
Yeah,
that's a whole
okay.
different ball
Yeah,
game
that's like
to what we do in
100%.
the day. So I feel
100%.
like it's a very broad conversation, and I feel like it's going to take many years for us to unpick everything. But girls have to start being real with themselves and with their journeys first. That's why we found, the storytelling, the creative expression helps them come to a better understanding of their experiences first.
100%. I feel like, especially as well, like, cool, we're in the Muslim community, and,
Mm.
like, obviously, being that we wasn't Muslim and we grew up and we had a mad life, and then we come to Islam and we kind of tone it down. There's certain things that it's had to take us through this journey to understand that, hold on, and and just from an early age, because what, I embraced Islam at what, about 20 years old, about 20,
21, yeah.
21 years old. So before that, rapping on the roads, doing what I'm doing, and I embraced Islam, and then it just kind of, for us, obviously, people have different triggers in their life or different moments that make them change the course of direction that they're going down. For a lot of us, where we came from in that era, a lot of us, it was becoming a Muslim. So, example, prior to being a Muslim, when I was rapping and doing things and whatever, it's like I never envisioned like having a wife. Do you ever think that he was gonna get married or have kids and whatever, whatever? That was the last thing. Like we come from an era where you most probably got a girl that's with you ride or die. But when a man them say, "Well, that's your son," you're like, "Nah, you're all in denial now. That's not me." Blah blah. You know, we just childish.
Yeah.
So now we become Muslim. 2 years later, all the man them's like married, pushing prams down the road, man, seeing like Ross is what, like people are shocked, and you're thinking like it's just, and that's just in a short space of time, 18 months, 24 months, you're married, you got a wife, like you got real responsibilities, and you're starting to like look at things differently, and that's given us the opportunity to kind of understand some of the where as men we went wrong, because now we got kids and you're having
Can I
daughters.
push that back to you? Like, you see stuff like that. Do you think like people understanding that their environment that they're in and the people around them, and when they take a step out and you have to really take stock of what it is and what these people are bringing to the table for you, do you think that's a massive thing with young girls now with the whole
100%.
social media and stuff like that,
100%.
feeling boxed in?
Yeah, my prison sentence was the best thing that happened to me. That was the only time I tasted like stability. That was the only time like I tasted isolation. But I always felt like isolated in my life. Like I always felt like, I was around these people, these guys and these girls, but they chose that life. Like I was really a street kid. I had to do this. I didn't know how I was going to put clothes on my back. Do you get what I'm saying? So when I went to prison, it was then that was me being taken out of my environment. And I say that because when I was in Holloway, I never really had the moment to like search my soul it to that extent, because I'm still around these girls that chose to live a certain life. They're still
100%.
like, but then I was still attracting and connecting with the girls that were groomed, the girls that had pimps, the girls that were going home on Wednesday, they were back by Tuesday, like I'm home now, guys, and like this is a party and whatever. But then I didn't really know my power then when I was in Holloway, because I was still quite caged as a young person. And when I got sent to Drake Hall, which was more up north, that was when I had the time. I was literally taken out of my environment, out of the hype of it, and I was able to assess and like really evaluate my character. And I started doing that work from then.
Yeah,
So 100%, I would say it is environment, but it also is nurture. Because then when I came home, I then had to unpick how I lacked nurture, and how did I form friendships and relationships, and where did these ideas come from? And it all come from media, from TV, and from these things, because
100%.
no one didn't sit down with me as a kid and as a girl and like explain. We didn't have no positive men around us to explain what a relationship is, how I should be treated in a relationship. So then the second part of my development started when I got released, and I got put straight back in my environment under the same circumstances, if not even worse, and I had to do the nurture side of it. So there's two sides of that coin.
In the environment that we're in now, I feel like as Muslims, a lot of the parents today, because I feel like we've created some type of, like I said, we've lived both lives, right, and we understand that the challenges that young girls face is universal, not universal, but it's across the board here. Yeah,
it's
it's
not
not just
separation.
it's not separation. So we feel like a lot of the parents that we've come to meet are ignorant of what's really taking place. And then recently in our community, a lot of young girls were coming out talking about, sexual abuse in the household that's been close by relatives and things like that. But I just wanted to kind of pick your brain in terms of, how early on in life do young girls, feel this type of pressure or being sexualized? How early can it take? Because a lot of the people, even watching this, especially from the male perspective, they're ignorant. Like people
Just
have got
before you
sisters.
finish, yeah, I saw something online, and lady said the first time she can remember being sexualized was when she was 8 years old, sucking a lollipop, and a man said, "Do you want me to give you something else to suck on a
That
bus?"
was me, yeah. That was my
Yeah,
post, yeah.
that was the post. And do you know how shocking that is for me? I've got daughters.
Yeah.
But
So
that's
for
what I'm
me,
saying.
it's
A lot of men, like their sisters have been through things, and when they hear things like this, they're still in denial. Then we come up from a community that's like very male like oriented,
patriarchy.
like
It is a lot of
so it's
patriarchy.
like, again, obviously we know like women are made to feel a certain way. Don't talk, don't say nothing. So a lot of people are being victimized in their own households, and they don't have the strength to talk. And some people just in denial, like it doesn't happen here, it doesn't happen in our community. But we're like, listen, you live in the UK, you live on ends. Like, what do you think's going on to your kids when they go to school or whatever happens? So like, how early on do you think these type of things kind of really take place?
Like, to be real with you, like the conversations that we've had, like the real life conversations we've had with our girls, abused from the age of 3 years old.
See, it's deep.
They're sexually abused by the age of 3 years old. That's kind of around the age where it starts. Kind of around the age where they realize this is not okay. This is not, and a lot of incest happens that we don't talk about. The
that's
brother,
true.
the step brother, the dad that goes outside the house, has kids outside the house, and then merges families, but hasn't really explained to each of these, like doesn't really know the situation in the two separate households, and then they get molested by stepbrothers and stuff like that. And on the roads, that's a different thing, how society like deals with girls. I think that probably starts from ages 7, I would say, depending on how developed the girl is as well.
Yeah, because like some of the stuff that in terms of like how early on it takes place, and also in the household, like you said, there was like
We were talking about primary school.
Yeah,
we won't mention names or anything, obviously, but we were discussing, we can remember far back as primary school, certain girls that would be getting felt up in the playground. They'd be letting boys look up their skirt. And for us, still having some form of innocence, even the boys who are doing it, you have to think, like, what was you seeing in your household to make you think that that's okay?
That's
rather than just looking at the girl and thinking, what made you...
Because there was always, and the dinner ladies were always, and when you look back at it, it was the same girl or the same girls, but no one asked the question why they like that.
What's going on?
What's going on in their household? Why are they just so like advanced like that? You know what I mean? To the point that.
But I think it is important to ask about the boys as well, because I was having that conversation with my friend the other day, and even when we did our last podcast, the girl was talking about she was molested by her brother, and she was saying like. She was labeling him a paedophile, and I'd said to her, like, I think it's important for us to be mindful. At that age, he was 12. At her age, she was a lot younger, but that's not what a paedophile is. Where did he learn that behaviour? He's still a kid himself.
100%.
Do you get what I'm saying?
100%.
And when I was talking to my friend, and when I was breaking it down with my friend, he said to me, a lot of his peers, a lot of guys had sex with older girls, and they didn't realise it at that age as well. And the games that necessarily we used to play as kids, I remember Kiss Chase. That's the only stupid game I remember. Like it's the games, and that's the conditioning. That's where it gets normalised. And I think we have to like speed up these conversations, because the way the world is quickly evolving, we don't really understand. If we don't understand this part of grooming, we're not going to understand how the internet is going to play a huge part in the girls' understanding of grooming, if that makes sense. And girls are being groomed, especially my niece is like 7, 8. She's all on TikTok doing all kinds of things, and that's a playground for these type of people as well. So I think we have to accept that we have been conditioned, and this has been normalized for like our generation, but and we have to do the research and stay informed as to how can we prevent that from happening to our daughters and nieces and stuff like that, because it's evolving quickly. 100%. These pedophiles and these people that do that, they're predators. They're very intelligent people. They're 100%. Not dumb. They will wait 5 years, 4 years before they strike. You get what I'm saying? It's a long game. They're intelligent, so we have to be steps ahead of them.
Wrong, some of them, that's their thing, is the long game. That's the satisfaction, no? Like their thing is waiting and seeing someone mature, and I know it's going to creep some people out, but it's a conversation that has to be had. That is their thing. It's not immediate gratification. It's the suffering and the planning ahead.
And that, I remember like a couple of weeks back, I was like on a forum with a load of different ladies from different organizations, some in America, some here. And the lady in America, she had some strong potent points in terms of the education that she gives her young children, because she was raped when she was young and stuff like that. And she said that a lot of the people that do the grooming and stuff like that, they don't like kids who are advanced in terms of knowing their body parts, who are confident and can speak. And they're like, no, because just like in any walk of life, if you, example, say you want to rob a bank or something like that, and you go up and you go to the bank and you see like the security is tight and whatever, you're going to think, I'm going to give that a pass. Whereas if you go there and it's lackadaisical, nothing's really going on, then you're going to try attempt to rob the bank, right? So she was saying it's the exact same thing with the young people. Like if a groomer tries it with your child, your daughter, whatever, and she's very aware of in terms of the boundaries between adults and young people.
I think also that's a play on mind control as well, because like even as young as I was when I started to get into gang stuff and that, I feel like a lot of guys felt like if they were the first one to give me that information, I would be loyal to them then. Do you get what I'm saying? So I feel like it is also, that's a mind control game. When you don't want somebody to know something and you want to feel like you're the one that gave them access to certain information. Now, when I go back and clock, hold on, this is wrong. But then before I go and say anything about it or act on that, I'm going to think, but he did this for me. He did that. But he taught me this. But he taught me that. And then that's how us as girls like confuse.
And that's what she
Who
spoke
we're
about,
supposed to
not
be
having
loyal to.
secrets. She spoke
Yeah.
about the no secret rule, because she said a lot of the time the groomers will do things like they'll give the kid a sweet, an ice cream, whatever, and say that's our secret. Don't keep, like, don't
And
tell
then the
mum.
secrets get
And then
bigger
it
every
builds
time.
and they build and they build. But you said when you have that rule with your children that there is no secrets, we don't keep secrets, full stop. So then when that guy goes to give the kid the ice cream, the drink, the whatever, and says like, don't tell mum, the kid's like, no, we don't keep secrets. I'm telling mum when she comes, you gave me a drink. He's like, okay, this is what is it. She's ready to talk at every point. And I just feel like we hear points and ways to kind of educate and help our children, but how many of us really do sit down and go through
And have that
this conversation?
And
Do you
also,
think, sorry, can I just throw something out there? Do you think the social media platforms have a responsibility as well? Because
as a platform,
as a platform,
parents, you shouldn't be letting your kids on there.
no,
100%.
yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of
But
parents,
there's
a lot
only
of parents glorify dressing their girls and boys as adults.
Mm.
That's where I start like, what's going on? Because I go in River Island and I see clothes and I'm like, why is there a bikini for a 3-year-old? Why is there, like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's true, but I mean the point, because I've got a girl as well. I've got 2 girls, and so there's only so much I can do as a parent, right?
Yeah.
The fact that I can hide the phone from my daughters as much as I want, but I think the social media platforms should also have a responsibility. There should be like a certain way where they can. You've got to be a certain age to be able to I don't know, maybe sign on to TikTok or.
The thing is, parents are letting the
They
kids.
have it
sign.
though. It's just
Yeah,
like, it's just like,
Parents are letting the kids.
it's just
that's-
like
they're
allowing,
letting them?
it's just like what's
Yeah.
the game? Call of Duty, FIFA, these games all have age limits. Parents will still go and buy their son
Yeah.
these games. So there's a lot of people put the age limit. A lot of places do. I think even Facebook and Instagram
Facebook
or
has
whatever,
it,
they put like 13 or something like that. But you'll still catch girls younger than that and boys younger than that.
100%.
Well, I think it's there's a big thing now where we've got
Sit down now.
where people are just neglecting like parental responsibility. So Facebook should have this. Everything should start at home.
that's what I'm saying, and it's a bit of a blame game, and I don't
Yeah.
like that. I like accountability.
Yeah, that's what I think
100%.
for us as
Yeah.
parents, like me with sons and daughters, I want to have accountability.
I get what he's saying
Do you know
though,
what
to
I
the
mean?
extent of, because like we spoke about the other day, the Shamima Begum, the young girl
Yeah.
that went away, she flew out the country, blah blah blah. She went and joined ISIS. We're saying she's 15 years old, so my responsibility as a parent is make sure I know where my 15-year-old is.
Yeah.
But now she gets to the airport.
Yeah, that's-
What's the responsibility
How
there?
did she get
How
on
did
the
she get on the
plane?
plane? How did she board? Where's
Well,
the question
guys, I
asked?
was 13 doing cunt trips.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
I get
understand?
it,
There's
I
no
get it.
official coming out asking me, you look 13, why are you going on the way to Scotland?
Yeah, no one's gonna ask.
Nobody's
you,
not
but
gonna ask
that's
us
what I'm
that.
saying.
Don't question.
They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
question it. Look at how many things happen
But
in
should
front of us
they?
every day and we're none the wiser.
Because most
100%.
people generally think you must have your parents' permission. Otherwise, why would you be here? Because normal, general people in the world, they're not thinking this girl's potentially a terrorist, this girl's potentially a drug dealer, this guy's potentially going to shoot someone, because
yeah.
they're under the assumption that in their bubble, where they live, how they function,
Sure is. We come
this
from a
stuff doesn't
different
happen.
generation. 'Cause I
Exactly.
come from a generation, I don't know you lot, where we grew up, like my white neighbours, whatever, they could beat me on the main road. They could put me under pressure. Like, Michael, when I see your mum, you're here with your playing games.
I like that as
So
well.
that
That's
was
people's
different.
problems nowadays. A lot of people they're too prideful.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what they don't understand is, I was saying it before, I think it takes a village.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to raise children,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
just take the parents.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really annoying when people are coming at you with good advice, like, or things like that.
Yeah.
Like, and then you could have had a mum or a parent that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, don't tell my son, don't be
Ah,
alone.
that's the
I was
Those
just about
are
to
the
say
kind of
worse.
people
Yeah.
that's like, well, okay, cool. So when your child goes and does that, that's your business.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's
think
what's
it's
changed.
more of a culture thing, because you, like, in this country, I've noticed, like, people don't get involved in what you do. Like, you can have a neighbor, that neighbor could die,
Yeah.
2 months, 3 months later, you don't even know that person's dead. So
Yeah,
people
times
don't,
have changed.
people don't get involved in your business. So even if this, like, saw you on the train, they're not gonna ask you. Even if someone verbally attacked you on the train, no one's gonna come and be like, what are you doing? Stop. You understand?
Yeah.
You're gonna have
Yeah.
to, like,
Think,
look
do
out
you
for
know
yourself
what, Willie, though,
regardless.
yeah? For I'm saying for us, like you said, where you grew up and stuff, you see us
Yeah.
on them estates, there was community. You see when
Yeah.
gentrification hits certain areas, your community is rubbed out. So all of that stuff you're talking about is gone in 6 months. All it takes is one estate to get knocked down.
Yeah.
They
it's
move
true.
half the community to Kent. another half across the country.
Yeah.
Do you want to move to Birmingham? We give you
Yeah,
5 grand for new furniture. Like that, you uprooting your life, your children is worth £5,000. Whereas you've lived in this area for 40 years, your friends,
Yeah.
family, people who take your kids to school, people who feed your kids when you fall short.
Yeah.
All of that leaves in 6 months, and then we have a load of white middle class people moving in. The kids are smoking weed, constantly calling police, but you bought into this. We didn't ask you to move here and make everything become more expensive. Do you see what I mean? That's why now people have got that separation, because half the neighbours, when you look at the wealth gap, you're on benefits. Your neighbours just bought a £600,000 one-bedroom apartment in Old Mitesfield,
Yeah.
where before you couldn't pay people to live.
Yeah,
When
it's
we were
rough.
growing up, police didn't come there.
Yeah,
Do you see
nah,
what I'm
it's
saying?
rough.
But as soon as that got knocked down, all the man, half them, their families are gone now. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's easy to look at and say there's no, but there's reasoning behind it. It's the same thing when
It's
they say
difficult, but
areas are ghettoized and whatever. That's not us. That's housing policy.
it's
You
difficult.
look why Birmingham, how Birmingham is when Asians and black and other ethnic minorities started moving to Birmingham. They created Aston for white people.
Yeah.
They moved all of the white people to Aston and then just left it to be what it is today. Do you see what I'm saying? There's all stuff behind it, but people just don't want to look deeper.
I feel like though, as much as obviously like we speaking like parent in terms of it's important for parents to kind of have a grip on their kids and stuff like that and have the main accountability. But I feel like if we're gonna make a change and a massive impact, it's got to be it's got to be a community.
Approach,
And then also we're not trying to get to the point where like the state is like taking over our parental rights and blah 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 because people don't want that as well. But at the same time, it's like
But do people understand
what's
that
the
their
line?
state already has parental
course.
rights over your kids? Like, these things are already in place.
Well, also, go ahead, let's speak about that.
With the education system,
Yeah.
especially because for how long have we been talking about sex education being taken out of your children's hands?
So
or
what's the? I wanted to get to this point. So when we talk about sex education, and we know it's important for children to know themselves and to know what sex is and to know their private parts and things like that. But where, as a community, where do we start that conversation? What age? Because everyone's different. Like you said,
Well,
you get
they
those
say,
parents.
in terms of
Can you
for
get involved in this one,
In
please?
it, man.
Please, because we can't cover this on our.
they say from the psychological studies that we read, yeah, in terms of like the daddyless daughter syndrome and stuff, they say that a girl starts fighting for her dad's attention over her mum by the age of 6.
That's deep.
So that's when she realizes that her dad is a different sexual being, and she starts to get a lot more affectionate towards her dad. Now that's when her dad is supposed to teach her the boundaries of affection, the boundaries of touch here, don't touch there. Yeah, we can hug like this, don't really hug like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And they start competing with the mum from that age. So I feel like why can't we normalize the conversation from that age? Not
but-
obviously to the extent
To that
of what
because
sex
there's no
is,
boundaries.
but
Because I feel like obviously with some parents, I don't know. Did you sit down like growing up, coming from an African household and stuff like that? I don't remember really having that conversation
I definitely
with my
didn't.
parents. You didn't have that
you
conversation.
know, I never had
So
a dad
we-
round, and this
Yeah,
is
I would
another
agree.
thing where it plays into. It's like for us, and for me, having them conversations was more awkward because I've never witnessed anyone having it with me,
Yeah.
and I never
100%.
witnessed my peers or my cousin, even though they had their dads around. That is not something that was spoke about.
I'm with
And
you.
do you see what I'm saying? It wasn't that kind of that way we were brought up or raised or whatever it was. There wasn't a space for certain conversations to happen, and that's no fault through their own because that's not how they were raised.
they were raised either,
But
yeah.
it is, like you said, on us is to start trying to break those generational things and having the real conversations. Like
Yeah.
I started explaining certain things to my daughters around about 7 or 8 when I asked, mummy's looks like this, mummy's body's like this, or daddy's. Do you understand?
Yeah,
And you have to have the courage to have real conversations. And
Absolutely.
I know some dads get weirded out about having the conversations about we can hug like this, you can't hug like that. Well, why should you feel weirded out as your daughter at the end of the day?
But a lot of that, I think, for us comes from, like I said, us embracing Islam. I feel like it's given us a lot of structure and do's and don'ts. Like us, where we are, Islam, it tells you by the age of 7 you've got to separate their beds.
Yeah.
And this is something that's just in a way of
Yeah.
life. So we don't. It says that you separate their beds, you separate their sleeping pattern, room to room. Like the girls get changed, blah blah. There's a lot of separation in terms of the genders. But then coming from the background we came from, sometimes you could think this is a bit extreme, this is a bit that. But like I said, with experience, we've come to see the benefits of the system that we're in. But being Muslims living where we live and how we are in this society, a lot of our traditions or our way of life has been lost. And I feel like a lot of the parents are just not ready. They're not even ready for what's hitting them and what's hitting their daughters in terms of what's really going on out here. And I feel like, especially in our community, you know, that we've embraced, looking at the Muslim community, they don't really have this conversation with their children, sex education, stuff like you guys born Muslim.
It's like shame.
It's not covered.
That's what I'm saying. So you guys are born into, so you
But then
know.
when we look at that, and then like we said earlier, the explosion that we saw on Twitter of young Muslim women talking about their experience of being abused, and it's usually
Like you
very,
said.
very close family members,
Yeah, like
brothers,
you mentioned
uncles,
again, yeah.
dads.
There was a girl, remember the one she posted, she said that her dad married a lady that had 4 sons, and the 4 sons took turns to rape her.
Oh my
And then when
days.
she told the dad was on like, well, you move a certain way around the house, it's your fault. And she's just traumatized. And again, that's what we said in terms of how they, because obviously in Islam we know we have covering, and you got to cover in front of opposite people that's not your brother, your dad, blah blah blah, if they're not from the same parent. So rather than him deal with the situation, he's just gone on some, it's your fault. And a lot of girls that we find that message us or try to reach out, and we kind of, there's only so much that we can do. I'm all about calling police. I don't business. Like, I'm like, something's happened. Yeah, I don't like.
But
What
Even
can I do for you?
that process within itself is also traumatic as well. A lot, like they say, what was supposed to be the finding that we found the other day? Only 98% of people that have raped actually, 98% walk away.
Yeah.
So that means
there's
only like less than
2%
2%
chance. Yeah, of you
actually get
being
convicted.
Yeah, a lot
of
of girls say that like the process of once the police have been called can be more traumatic than the
I can imagine.
than the actual trauma itself.
Yeah,
like,
and that's what always happened. Because also what I've seen is that there's a lot of young men who's also been abused within from what we've seen recently from the community. So what happens is when a girl speaks out about her abuse and the guy that's done it, whether he be in a position of power, a lot of young men who've been abused by the same guy that don't want it to come out, then start pounding the girl like you're a liar, you're this, you're that, because
Swear.
they're in the fear of that. If it comes out about what he done to her, it's gonna come out what he done to me.
Yeah.
And out of that, there's a lot of crazy things and a lot of trauma going on in the community. Whereas, like, how do you unpack that? Because without a shadow of a doubt, we know a lot of guys who have been also, you know, what I'm saying, they've been abused in these positions of power where, you know, like in our community especially, a lot of the people that, like, example, the weekend schools, they don't go through that. What's that check called?
Safeguarding
The
processes.
safeguarding
And
processes.
A lot of them aren't even
CRBR.
qualified.
They're not even
It's just because
qualified.
they know people, they've got a job.
And
that's
it.
a predator's
And they put-
paradise.
And they put them. So a lot of the time, that's what I'm saying. So even us having conversations like this is that we know we have a different type of audience that comes in. But it's just to let people know at the same time, you know, our children are being sexualized at an early age. They're going through a lot of things. And we got to have these conversations much earlier in terms of...
I just think it's important because I work in a school, I teach. I think it's very important to, even if you don't literally want to do it to your child, like necessarily, because I know, like you said, it can get a bit like, oh, this is a bit awkward, I know it's my child and stuff. Get a book and just show your child, like, that's not places that's okay. Like, highlight, this is red area. Oh, where's red areas that you think is not okay for somebody, or you don't feel comfortable if somebody cuddles you there. Do you like, you know, like those kind of things, like you don't necessarily have to just...
pressure off
100%.
sort of thing.
Yeah, like use drawings, like this what we mean by creative. When you get creative with it, it can become less
Stressful.
less stressful,
And
less
daunting.
personalized.
Yeah.
It's not too much, and the child can. A lot of children learn by visually seeing,
As well.
and they have to see it. That we know a lot of, even when babies are born, they learn by copying the parents.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So they learn by imitation, and that's the same when kids, even when they grow up in schools. I had a group come in and they did it. They drew a big person. They got a kid to lay on the floor, and they drew around him and her, and then they got them to circle. Oh, where's okay for somebody to high five you, or where's okay for somebody to just flick you, or do you know, like just that kind of thing. I think is important.
That's important. Education wise, obviously being in education, things like that, in terms of what can we do? Because like we said, we feel like a lot of the things that we thought were normal growing up in school, we've come to realize it's not. I just don't know a school like where in the corridors people weren't, but that's men, and I don't know about certain, but I know like girls used to do their thing, fill man up and all of that stuff. So so I don't know what's going on. Like you just be in the corridor, whatever. But my
Our
thing is
schools
this.
were wild. I'm not
So
gonna
I'm
lie.
thinking, where is it? Because girls
was
always got
different,
felt
boy.
up in school and stuff like that.
Nah, I
And
was more
I feel like when the
fighting.
girls were getting filled up, it's like that process of school. It's like, what was I saying to someone the other day? It's like you found the school had a culture. So you come to a school and it has a culture already. It's a culture of like I said, it's a
Promiscuity,
sexualized,
yeah.
it's a sexualized culture where like as soon as you walk in, you can be someone that's, and there's a lot of peer pressure as well. So you might not even be about that life. We come from a generation where it's like if you're not even moving like that, it's like, what's wrong with you? Are you all right? Like what's your problem? So already there's a lot of peer pressure on some people who are not from that type of background, that culture, and then there's a lot of girls getting filled up. People are having sex in school. A lot of things were going on from an early age. So my thing is
Primary
that
school or secondary school?
secondary school. We're talking
Oh.
about.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
so
I had, there was some stories in secondary school. I mean, I was that kid that was friends with everyone. Like I was friends with every different group. No one couldn't tell me where to sit. Like, so all those things of like, oh wow, like girls were literally doing these things. I would be like, what are you doing? But then I was that girl that then found out one girl was doing stuff in the cupboard, and I went to go shout and tell everyone. I was like, "You nasty!" I started shouting. So I think people are different. I think it also, like you said, thank you. Like you said, obviously it's the environment, and you could go into a school and they're a lot promiscuous, but then you have to, it's like if you've instilled correct morals and values and stuff into your child, they're not going to get involved in that.
That's the peer pressure I was talking about. I was thinking, how do we
I think
educate?
it's
Because
not.
peer pressure, I don't know. For me, peer pressure, like I come from a good household. And in terms of, if we talk about the peer pressure of needing to have the latest pair of trainers, like no one couldn't tell me that 95s weren't important. They were important. Like you couldn't tell me they weren't important. Mum could say, no, it's cool. These would do, this would that. All right, cool. That's what you can afford. That's your business. I want to find a way to get it. It's just important. And I just feel like the peer pressure that a lot of young people go through, especially now, because I feel like before, if you leave school, it's done. No, there's no more pressure, no more nothing. Now it follows you home on your phone and social media, blah, blah,
that's
blah.
true.
So now I think to myself, how do we equip our young men to just be brave enough to say, no, I'm not following that crowd. I'm not going to get involved. I don't care what type of pressure is on me, because you got to be a certain type of person.
I think
true.
schools need to start doing character development sessions.
That's it.
And I feel like that would be the solution. Like we focus on like academics and stuff, and that's my thing with Daddyless Daughters. We're not focusing on emotional intelligence and character building, which those are the tools that we actually need. Those are the tools that we use to make decisions and stuff like that. So if they're not being taught character, they're gonna have to figure it out by themselves.
Character is important.
They're gonna have to figure out, okay, I don't want to be known for that. I don't want to be known for this. I don't want to. Do you get what I'm saying? And I don't think when you're young and you make certain decisions, you don't understand that those decisions can stick, and it can stick
100%.
for a long period of time.